A quick like and subscribe really helps our channel grow and allows us to bring you even more amazing content. Thank you for your support. I never thought a night out with friends could turn into such a ridiculous dilemma, but here I was, sitting on a bar stool, nursing my drink and feeling increasingly uncomfortable. It was a Saturday night, and my friends and I decided to hit up our favorite dive bar, the one with neon lights flashing and the kind of energy that makes you forget about work for a while. The laughter and chatter around me felt inviting, but a creeping tension settled in my stomach as the night wore on. There was this guy, Jason, a friend of a friend, who'd been hanging around our group. He was charming in an overly friendly way, and I'd tried to shake off the sense that he was enjoying my company a bit too much. When the night started winding down, Jason proposed that we all share an Uber back to our neighborhood. I was totally on board until he added, "But it's a little tight, so, if you want to sit on my lap, it's cool." A rush of embarrassment washed over me, mixed with indignation. I laughed it off, hoping it was a joke, but he just grinned, clearly serious. I could feel my friend's eyes darting around, unsure, some snickering at the absurdity. My heart raced, and for a fleeting moment, I considered the situation, a mixed bag of social pressure and a desire not to be the downer of the group. But something deep inside me recoiled at the idea of sitting on a stranger's lap, even for a 6-minute ride. I didn't want to make a scene, but the thought alone left a bad taste in my mouth. I didn't want to be rude, yet I couldn't shake off the feeling that it would trivialize my own boundaries. In that instant, I decided. "No, thanks," I said, trying to sound lighthearted, "I'll just call an Uber." Jason raised an eyebrow, and I could feel a flicker of surprise from the others. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears as I pulled out my phone, almost relieved when I saw the app open, like a lifeline. The ride arrived almost immediately, and as I slid into the back seat, the warm glow of the streetlights comforted me. I didn't feel guilty, I felt empowered for choosing my own space, my own comfort. But the next day, I woke up to a flurry of mixed texts from my friends. Some thought I had totally overreacted, while others supported my decision. Jason texted me, claiming I was overreacting and, at first, I felt a twinge of uncertainty. Did I really screw things up? Yet, the more I pondered, the more I realized how important it was to stand my ground. So I replied with calm resolve, "I respect myself too much to sit on someone's lap." It was silent on his end after that. Eventually, my friends and I had a long conversation where I expressed my feelings, and to my surprise, they rallied behind me. It's funny how a night that started off as just another outing turned into a lesson about boundaries. So, am I the asshole for taking an Uber home instead of sitting on a man's lap? I guess I learned you've got to prioritize your comfort over what's deemed polite, and in the end, standing up for yourself is never the wrong move. It was late when I finally decided to share the story on Reddit. I remember the glow of my phone screen illuminating my tired face as I typed, feeling the weight of the night rest heavily on my shoulders. In the dim light of the living room, with my friends finally winding down after a long evening of laughter and too many drinks, I couldn't shake the tension that had built up over the past few hours. I had gone to the bar that night thinking I was just going to unwind, have a few laughs, and maybe flirt with some cute guys. I didn't expect to find myself in a situation that felt more uncomfortable than exhilarating. It started innocently enough. We were all seated around the booth, sharing stories and shots, and I loved the energy. But as the night went on, the bar grew busier, and tables filled in like sardines. I could feel the air growing heavier, the laughter mixing with the loud music. That's when a guy, let's call him Tom, plopped down next to me. He was charming, I'll give him that, with a disarming smile and witty jokes that kept the mood light. Things took a turn, though, when I noticed the space in the booth could barely accommodate all of us. I was sitting on the edge, and Tom suggested that since it was so cramped, I could just sit on his lap. In the moment, I felt a weird blend of panic and disbelief. I laughed it off, playing it coy, but Tom persisted. I was bewildered. I mean, who offers that up? My body was tense, every instinct urging me to flee. I could feel my heart racing as I tried to summon a smile, but deep down, I was only feeling more and more uncomfortable. As I caught the worried glances from my friends, I took a deep breath and stood my ground, saying, "I'd rather just take an Uber home, thanks." And honestly, it was brave of me. I felt brave, until I saw Tom's face fall, that smirk replaced with a mix of confusion and irritation. My friends exchanged looks, and I could hear quiet whispers, some in support of me, others unsure, and I felt suddenly trapped in my own mind. Did I overreact? Was I being rude? I couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps this was just a harmless suggestion in the eyes of some, but for me, it represented a line I wasn't willing to cross. After stepping outside to call the Uber, I felt the cool night air hit me like a needed wake-up call. I thought of all the times I had compromised my comfort for the sake of others' expectations, and it filled me with resolve. I'd rather ride alone than feel that pressure to sit on a stranger's lap. As I sat in the back seat, scrolling through Reddit, a thought struck me. Perhaps what I'd experienced wasn't just about that particular instance but about speaking up in a world where being nice sometimes felt like just a cover for discomfort. After typing my story and hitting post, I felt an odd mix of relief and vulnerability. As the comments started rolling in, so many people understood my perspective. "You're not the asshole," echoed from screen to screen, a chorus of solidarity that warmed my heart. And while the night was far from what I'd hoped, it turned into something much more significant than just a poorly timed joke. Yes, it was just a night out, but it transformed into an unexpected lesson about what it means to trust yourself. I spent the next few days thinking about that experience, recognizing how often we brush off our own boundaries for the sake of acceptance. I even started to notice more of those moments in my daily life, where I'd hesitate to voice my discomfort, swayed by the fear of seeming rude. Reading through the supportive threads fueled my drive to stand my ground, and I began to embrace saying no when I needed to, a skill I realized I'd neglected in my efforts to go along to get along. A couple of weeks later, I saw Tom again at another bar, and instead of feeling anxious, I just felt indifferent. He approached me to chat, and I politely kept the conversation light. I knew I had made the right choice that night, because ultimately, valuing my comfort over someone else's casual expectation felt like a small victory. I ended up getting home that night feeling empowered, and while I know I might face similar situations again, I also know now that being true to myself is always worth it, no matter how awkward it feels in the moment. In the end, I learned that standing up for myself is never a wrong move. It's a chance to rediscover my voice, my space, and my boundaries. So no, I'm not the asshole for choosing an Uber over a lap, but I'm proud I chose to prioritize me. As I sank into my couch, the soft fabric enveloping me, I couldn't shake the odd blend of liberation and anxiety that still buzzed inside me. It was strange how such a simple decision could spark so many emotions. I replayed the night in my mind, the vibrant laughter, the thumping bass of the music, the wave of warmth that washed over me as I watched my friends dance, each of them lost in their own world. I remembered the moment it shifted, that realization that I was uncomfortable, that pressure to conform to an unspoken agreement just to keep the peace. I had always considered myself a go-with-the-flow person, but that night, I felt something crack within me, something that whispered it was okay to disrupt the flow, that it was okay to be a stick in the proverbial wheel if it meant preserving my integrity. The next few days rolled by in a reflective haze. I felt lighter in my interactions, as if I was shedding some skin. At work, I found myself speaking up in meetings where I might have let others dominate. I would joke about it to myself, saying, "Hey, if I can say no to an awkward lap ride, I can definitely voice my ideas." My coworkers laughed, likely thinking I was just being quirky, but for me, it was a reinvention. The incident became a quiet but significant marker, a reminder of what it meant to assert myself. Later that week, I bumped into Mark at a coffee shop. He was already at a table, scrolling through his phone, when I walked in. The first thing I noticed was the stiffening of his posture as our eyes met. Part of me wanted to walk over, to clear the air, but another part, the braver part, told me to just grab my coffee and be on my way. As I stood in line, I debated my next steps. Should I confront him? Apologize for being rude, or better yet, should I inquire about his reaction? I certainly wanted to know if he regretted it, or if he still felt I had overstepped by turning him down. In that moment of indecision, as I waited for my soy latte, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Sarah, my close friend who had backed me up that night. "How are you holding up? I know things got weird with Mark. Let's talk." I smiled, that little flutter of warmth igniting inside again. I shot her a quick reply, reassuring her I was fine and would love to chat. It was strange how one experience could ripple through various aspects of your life, redefining friendships, shifting dynamics. Later that afternoon, after what felt like a caffeine-fueled confession with Sarah, I learned that Mark had been taken aback by my decision, less about my refusal to sit on his lap and more about the way I articulated my feelings. He said something about respect, Sarah recalled. It struck me as comical how he had made a big deal out of a small snub, but there was a grain of truth in it, a lesson for him, maybe. Days turned into weeks, and though I hadn't spoken to Mark since that coffee shop encounter, I noticed a change in him. He approached our mutual friends, started conversations with my name embroidered on a few hesitant apologies that slipped out during group outings. I would hear snippets, vague admissions that felt like half-baked attempts to rewrite our shared narrative. It didn't matter to me as much as it had. I felt grounded, unfazed by his need for validation. Looking out my window as the city hummed below, I realized that this experience, that simple Uber ride home, had opened something within me. I was more attuned to how I felt in various situations, and how I didn't have to adjust myself just to fit someone else's frame. It was then that I understood, some lessons come wrapped in unconventional packages, and sometimes a night of awkwardness can lead to unexpected revelations about who we are and who we choose to become. So, no, I wasn't the asshole, but part of me knew that this was only the tip of the iceberg. I would encounter moments like this again, tiny crossroads where comfort and courage met. Each decision carving out a little more space for the authentic me to thrive. And maybe, just maybe, that was the greatest victory of all. I always envisioned my daughter's baby shower as a joyful celebration, the kind where laughter fills the air and love wraps around us like a warm blanket. I spent months planning it, poring over details to create a cozy and inviting atmosphere, twinkling lights, pastel colors, and little treats I knew my friends would love. I wanted it to be a day where my family and friends could come together, share stories, and relish this exciting new chapter in our lives. That's why, when my sister-in-law, Claire, showed up unannounced the day before the shower, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. You see, Claire and I have a rocky history. Her relentlessly critical nature sometimes tarnishes our family gatherings, and I feared that her presence would cast a shadow over what I hoped would be a joyful day. When I opened the door to find her standing there with a half-hearted smile and a newly purchased gift bag, my stomach sank. I stiffened, trying to pull myself together while also preparing for the inevitable flood of unsolicited advice about parenting that usually flowed from her lips. I took a deep breath, my mind racing, wondering how to navigate this unexpected complication. "Why are you here?" I asked, trying to sound casual yet firm. "I thought I'd swing by to help," she said, her voice dripping with feigned sweetness. A small part of me wanted to appreciate the gesture, but the overwhelming anxiety in my gut screamed at me to set boundaries. "I appreciate that, Claire, but I really want this to be a special day for my daughter. Maybe you can join us later?" The silence felt heavy, and I swore I could hear the tension crackling between us. She raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback. "You're kicking me out of my own family event?" There it was, the manipulation I expected, wrapped up in a tone that screamed victim. I could feel frustration bubbling beneath my skin, fighting my desire to explain myself. "I'm not trying to kick you out, I just want a peaceful celebration, and it feels like you bring a certain heaviness." My words hung in the air, sounding harsher than I intended, but they contained the truth of how I felt. Claire's expression flickered, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw hurt before it was replaced with indignation. "Fine. Enjoy your little party," she spat, turning on her heel and striding away, her dignity seemingly shattered. As I closed the door, I felt a mixture of relief and guilt wash over me. Had I been unfair? Was I the one being an asshole for prioritizing my own peace? The idea gnawed at me throughout that night, every moment of silence filled with doubt. The next day, the shower unfurled just as I imagined it would. Friends and family mingled freely, laughter bubbled over like the fizzy drinks in our glasses, and for several hours, my heart soared. But every time I saw my brother arriving solo, I felt that same guilt creep back in as I remembered Claire sitting alone somewhere, nursing a wounded pride. I tried to enjoy myself, but the ghost of that confrontation loomed until I finally said goodbye to the last of my guests. Later that night, when I scrolled through social media, I stumbled across several tagged pictures from the shower. I looked happy, surrounded by friends and family, yet a nagging thought kept echoing in my head. Did I handle it right, or did I let my insecurities ruin my relationship with her? In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of unresolved tension. I started questioning whether this was just a symptom of something deeper in our family dynamics. Would I regret my decision down the line? So I reached out to my brother, and we talked about everything, from Claire's behavior to how I felt navigating family interactions. Surprisingly, he acknowledged my perspective. He even promised to talk to her about it, suggesting perhaps a reconciliation could be achieved, allowing us to move forward as a family. As I sat with those thoughts, I finally understood, it's not about being right or wrong, but about learning to communicate and help each other grow. And with that realization, I felt a tiny flicker of hope for our family moving forward. As I hung up the phone with my brother, there was a strange mix of relief and uncertainty flooding my thoughts. I couldn't help but wonder how my sister-in-law would take the conversation when my brother confronted her. Would she be open to understanding my side of things, or would it just spiral into more drama? I thought back to the baby shower, the way she'd scoffed at every detail, how her presence felt like a weight pressing down on what should have been a joyous occasion. I spent days anxiously anticipating my brother's next move while centering myself in preparation for whatever fallout might come. On Thursday evening, I found myself in the living room with my partner, Jess, trying to wind down from the day. The baby shower was still fresh in my mind, and I divulged everything about the conversation I'd had with my brother. I shared my worries, my hope, and a hint of guilt for speaking up so firmly that day. "Do you think I went too far?" I asked, wringing my hands. Jess looked over at me from the couch, their brow furrowed in thought. "You did what you felt was necessary to protect yourself and your daughter. I get that family can complicate emotions, but you have every right to set boundaries." They took a deep breath, as if choosing their words carefully. Sometimes, the toughest conversations end up being the most important ones. I appreciated their perspective, though the voice of doubt still nagged at me. Was I being overly dramatic? Would my actions alienate my brother in the end? Time ticked away, and as weekends typically go, the anxiety simmered until it finally boiled over. It was Sunday afternoon when my brother called me again. I could feel my heart racing as I prepared for whatever news he had. "Hey, can we talk?" he said as usual, but his tone was different this time, more serious and thoughtful. We chatted for a bit about everyday things, the weather, what was going on in our lives, and then he dove deep into the reason for his call. "Claire and I had it out," he started, and my chest tightened. Adrenaline coursed through me as he continued. "I told her about your concerns and how her actions felt dismissive and hurtful. She didn't take it well at first, and it got pretty heated." My palms turned clammy as I envisioned this altercation, but I kept quiet, allowing him to share his experience fully. "But, we also talked about what you brought up, about family and communication. She didn't like that, but I think it got through to her eventually. I said she needs to realize that it's not just her who's part of this family, you and your daughter matter too. That it's okay for her to feel how she feels, but pushing negativity on our family during a celebration crosses a line." My heart swelled with pride for my brother. He understood where I was coming from, yet I felt a weight settle in my stomach for Claire. "She agreed to meet with you," he said before there was a long pause. "But it's going to take time. I think she feels embarrassed, but I told her she can't just ignore how everyone else feels." I nodded along, though he couldn't see me. "Thanks for doing that," I managed to say, my voice thick with emotion. We set a tentative plan for Claire to come over the following Saturday, and as I hung up the phone, a part of me felt as if I was stepping onto a delicate tightrope. That Saturday morning, the atmosphere in our home was charged with both excitement and apprehension. Jess helped me freshen up the living room, as if that would magically solve any underlying tension. We set out snacks and drinks while I chastised myself for fussing over everything, overly conscious of every detail. Jess took my hands and squeezed them, grounding me before the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Claire stood there, arms crossed defensively. It struck me just how different she looked in person compared to the fiery persona she projected during the shower. Beneath that tough exterior, I sensed genuine vulnerability. I offered her a timid smile and invited her in. "Thanks for coming," I said softly, and she nodded, still reserved. There was an uncomfortable pause before Jess left us alone, sensing the tension in the air. "So, this is awkward," Claire finally said, breaking the silence. I nodded, letting her lead the conversation. "I know I was out of line at the baby shower." She hesitated, and my heart softened at her admission. "And it's just, I've been feeling all these things. I thought maybe my comments would lighten the mood, but looking back, I see how they hurt you," she murmured, her eyes casting downward. There was something so raw in her admission that my anger started to ebb away. We talked for what felt like hours, revealing insecurities and fears about family and future expectations. I was surprised by her honesty. It had been easier for her to guard herself with mocking humor than to admit how vulnerable she felt. I also shared my struggles, how the thought of raising a daughter in a family dynamic filled with tension was daunting. In the end, we both ended up standing on common ground, needing and wanting change, but also wanting to protect our family ties. We ended with tentative apologies and a vague commitment to try rebuilding this bridge between us. As she left that day, I felt lighter. Despite the uncertainty still hanging in the air, I recognized that healing would take time, but at least we had begun the journey together. It wouldn't be easy, and I knew that bumps were still ahead. Yet in that moment, I figured that was okay. We were, after all, trying to learn how to communicate better, as my brother had said. And maybe, just maybe, we could grow together. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself caught in a gentle tug-of-war between hope and skepticism. The baby shower planning was in full swing, the air buzzing with excitement over upcoming decorations and tiny outfits we'd be bringing to life soon for our little girl. I would wake up each morning with the sweet taste of anticipation, only to have my thoughts interrupted by flashes of past interactions with Claire. Would she really change? Would our family gatherings begin to feel lighter, filled with laughter instead of tension? I often sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone, wondering if I should reach out to Claire again. But then, a familiar voice in my head would echo, reminding me of previous disappointments, times I thought things would get better, only to be left with an empty feeling when they didn't. The baby shower was 2 days away when my brother called to say he had spoken with her. "She's willing to try," he said, his voice filled with a mix of hope and caution. I felt that flicker brighten momentarily, but it quickly dimmed as I remembered the many times Claire's words felt empty, a mix of falseness masked under the guise of a smile. As the day approached, I focused on the little details. Friends were coming over to help, laughter floated through our living room as we decorated with pastel bunting and clusters of balloons. But deep down, I couldn't shake the knot in my stomach. Would Claire spoil this moment for me? I tried to breathe in the joy around me, allowing myself to appreciate the love and support I was surrounded by, but every burst of laughter found its way back to the worry in my heart. When the day finally arrived, the sun poured through our kitchen windows, glinting off the table full of presents and homemade snacks. Cups of pink lemonade sparkled under the bright decorations, and I found myself smiling, my daughter kicking gently within me as I soaked in the moment. I took a deep breath, feeling a swell of gratitude for the friends who were there to share this special day, yet the doorbell rang and my heart plummeted. It was Claire. She stood on the porch, dressed in soft shades of pastel, holding a wrapped gift that looked, at least on the outside, inviting. I hesitated, standing by the door as my breath caught in my throat. I had hoped this space would remain a sanctuary, something untouched by previous conflict. "Hey, Claire," I said, forcing a smile as she stepped inside, her eyes scanning the joyful chaos. There was a moment of dread before I noticed her trying to fit in, even cracking a joke about how she almost got lost in the sea of balloons. I realized I had expected a storm but was met with blue skies instead. Yet as we mingled, I felt the tension churn within me. Small talk turned into awkward exchanges, and I clutched my drink tightly, afraid of saying the wrong thing. Claire's laughter sometimes felt forced, and the look in her eyes hinted at something deeper, the fear of not belonging. By mid-afternoon, I managed to pull Claire aside, the chatter around us fading as I took a leap of faith. "I appreciate you coming today, genuinely. It means a lot to me," I started, my voice steadying with the weight of sincerity. "But I also need you to know, I want you to just be real with me. If you're feeling uneasy or if something bothers you, can we talk about it together? I want this to be a place of honesty." She blinked, surprise flickering across her face, and instead of pushing away or shutting down, she sighed. "And I need to say something, too. I realize I haven't been the best sister-in-law. I guess I was scared of losing my brother and misunderstood your situation. I can't promise to be anyone but me, but I'll try to be better." With that, something changed between us. The knot in my stomach loosened, and for the first time, I could see Claire not just as a competitor for my brother's love but as someone grappling with her own insecurities. As we moved back to join the others, I felt lighter. We didn't speak of everything, the hurt, the misunderstandings, but the air between us carried the weight of a fragile pact. The rest of the shower passed in waves of laughter, shared stories, and a few tears. Claire even took a moment to help me with gifts, her smile no longer a mask but a beacon of newfound understanding. As the day drew to a close, I watched as my friends and family gathered. In that chaos stood a possibility I never thought I'd see, a family learning to navigate their imperfections together. I felt a bittersweet recognition that we were nowhere near perfect, but perhaps, that was okay. We weren't just learning to communicate, we were learning to accept each other's twisted paths. Maybe, as the years unfolded, Claire and I could continue peeling back the layers. I closed the door behind our last guest, feeling the warmth of connection blaze softly, promising to cultivate that flicker into something undeniable. Life would still have its bumps, it always does, but now, I felt we had sprouted seeds of empathy among us. And for now, that was more than enough. I never thought I would find myself in a situation where I'd have to question my friendship with Jenna, but here we are. It all started innocently enough. We met in college, two awkward freshmen navigating the maze of dorm life together. Our friendship flourished as we shared late-night study sessions fueled by pizza and too many energy drinks, laughably bonding over our failed attempts at dating. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. I started throwing small get-togethers, just 8 or 10 of us, mostly to celebrate milestones like birthdays or just the fact that it was Friday. But there was something about Jenna's attendance at these parties that began to weigh on my mind. She would show up, of course, always dressed to the nines, charming the other guests with her vivacious energy. But as the night wore on, there was a familiar script. She'd monopolize conversations, drifting from one group to another, leaving a wake of uneasy tension. I'd try to steer her away from making crass jokes about our friends, and more than once, I found myself making half-hearted excuses to distance myself from her antics. It reached a point where I dreaded sending out those invites, knowing that Jenna would show up and overshadow everything with her loud laughter, often aimed at jabs that didn't sit well with anyone. One evening, after another party where I spent too much time apologizing for her behavior, I finally broke down. I texted her, a decision that felt monumental, a mix of fear and relief swirling in my stomach. "Hey, I think I need to take a step back from inviting you to parties. It's just hard to manage things when you're there." I stared at the screen, my pulse racing as I waited for her response. The 3 bubbles floated for what felt like an eternity before her message came back, sharp and cold. "Wow. I can't believe you'd say that." I felt this strange mixture of guilt and empowerment flood through me. Was I the asshole for wanting to reclaim my space, my friendships, my peace of mind? The days that followed were awkward. I avoided larger friend groups fearing that the conversation would come back to Jenna, and I tiptoed around mutual friends who seemed torn between us. Jenna didn't reach out. It felt like I'd taken a match to a bridge I didn't want to burn but had no choice in doing so. But then, one night, I received a simple text from a mutual friend. She was wondering if I wanted to grab coffee. I hesitated at first, but curiosity won me over. Over steaming mugs, she shared Jenna's side. Apparently, Jenna felt isolated and hurt, convinced that everyone loved her except me. I hadn't noticed she'd been going through some personal stuff, and all the over-the-top antics had been an attempt to mask her vulnerability. I felt a pang of regret, mixed with the thought that maybe I hadn't handled the situation in the best way. I reached out to Jenna, just an olive branch of sorts, keeping it light, suggesting we go out for drinks and talk. The conversation was awkward, yet as we spoke, I realized we both had missed the mark with each other. I shared my perspective, and she showed me hers. Looking back, I'm still not sure if I was entirely in the right or if I was actually being an asshole. I learned that sometimes friendships require deeper conversations and understanding instead of ultimatums. We've been trying to rebuild a foundation, one conversation at a time, hopefully forging a new path forward with a little more grace and a lot more empathy. I remember the first time we truly sat down to talk, the clink of ice in our glasses echoing in the small booth wedged against the back wall of that bar. It felt almost surreal, like characters in a movie on the brink of reconciliation. I could sense the tension weaving between us, a taut string just waiting to snap under the weight of our histories and miscommunications. She looked different in the dim bar light, her usually guarded expression softened by the flickering candle between us. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the emotional tug-of-war ahead. "I just didn't see it coming," I said, hoping my words would take root in a space where we could finally meet in the middle. "Every party I threw, you seemed withdrawn. I could feel my excitement dimming when I saw you on the edge of the crowd, not really engaging with anyone." She leaned back, visibly grappling with my words. "Well, you never asked me how I felt about it, did you?" Her voice had that familiar, soft edge of vulnerability that I'd come to recognize, a hint of frustration layered within. "It felt like you were trying to appease the group, and I was just part of the decoration." I frowned at her choice of word, decoration. Without thinking, I blurted, "I didn't mean to treat you like an accessory." I noticed a flicker of hurt flash across her face, and I quickly backtracked. I just thought we were going through the motions together. I wanted to share good times." She sighed deeply, fingers tracing the condensation pooling on her glass. "I see that now. But sometimes, it felt like you were more interested in being the host than being my friend, like you needed a perfect party, and I was just an extra." Those words hit hard. I wanted to argue, to insist that my intentions had been true, but I paused, allowing her feelings to seep in. It dawned on me that maybe I had been so focused on creating the perfect social atmosphere that I'd lost sight of what really mattered: connection. The conversation rolled into the night, bouncing between minor grievances and heartfelt sentiments, the awkwardness gradually giving way to genuine understanding. I learned how she viewed our friendship, the highs and lows she felt in the backdrop of my social life. Between laughter and serious revelations, there was a palpable sense of repair in the air. It wasn't perfect, there were still silences that hung like clouds, full of unsaid things, and sometimes the guilt would eat away at me when I thought of those evenings where her laughter felt distant. Yet, as the hours passed, I felt something shift. We weren't where we had been before, but maybe we didn't have to be. The next few months were a delicate dance of rebuilding, peppered with coffee dates and book exchanges instead of parties. Our conversations deepened, touching not just on the light topics but on dreams, failures, and everything in between. I remember one late afternoon, sitting in a cafe where the sunlight danced on the floor like an old friend, she confessed she struggled with vulnerability. I matched her honesty by admitting that I had a habit of ghosting the deeper emotions, preferring to sidestep anything that felt too heavy or complicated. It was in those moments of shared truth that I started to see that my approach could be problematic, stunted. No more half-hearted invites to gatherings and overlooking how her absence echoed in my life. I committed to including her, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to nurture our relationship. Still, I couldn't shake that lingering question from our first talk. Was I the asshole for needing to set boundaries, or was it my fault for not recognizing the friendship was fraying? Perhaps it was a bit of both, a complex tapestry woven with missteps and misunderstandings. Ultimately, it was clear that the journey to mend our friendship was more about understanding than assigning blame. And while I didn't know where we might end up, the path forward felt much clearer each time we shared a moment together, each new memory a building block toward something stronger. So here we are, navigating this space with more grace and empathy, discovering that perhaps the true test of friendship isn't in our moments of success but the nuances of our failures, learning to forgive not just each other but ourselves, one conversation at a time. One of those pivotal moments came just a week later, after an unexpectedly rainy Saturday kept me cooped up at home. I had just settled onto my couch, a pile of takeout boxes littering the coffee table, when my phone buzzed with a text from Jess. "Want to take a walk? I have something to talk about." My stomach flipped. I didn't want to overanalyze the invitation, but instinctively I knew that this wasn't just about a stroll in our favorite park. I felt both apprehension and a tingling sense of hope as I replied with a simple, "Sure. Just give me a few." As we walked side by side, the clouds hanging low above us, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and new beginnings, Jess broke the silence first. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I realized I've been so focused on feeling excluded that I didn't see how my actions contributed to the mess we found ourselves in." The sincerity in her voice pierced through the tension that had lingered between us since our last heart-to-heart. I couldn't help but smile, feeling a weight lift just from her honesty. Yeah, and for me, it was about feeling unheard, like my frustrations didn't matter. It wasn't about the parties, but about feeling like my feelings were being brushed off. I guess I was tired of making excuses for why I needed boundaries. The words spilled from me, as if I was finally allowing myself to breathe and let the air of vulnerability flow freely between us. "I never wanted you to feel left out, but it feels like every time I extended an invitation, you were going through your own thing. I didn't know how to reach you." Jess nodded solemnly, her brow furrowing in thought. "I see that now. I was dealing with my own issues, stress at work, family stuff, but I didn't realize I was shutting you out. I thought I was protecting myself, you know?" There was a pause as we stopped beneath the swaying branches of an old oak tree. The wind rustled its leaves, mirroring the turbulence of our unresolved emotions. "I missed you, I really did," she continued, her voice softer now, more delicate, like the moment itself. "I guess I just didn't know how to reach out without feeling ashamed." I took a deep breath, feeling the sincerity of her words wrapping around my heart like a hug. "We're in this together, Jess. I don't want you to feel ashamed of needing space. But we have to communicate, stop dancing around issues. We owe each other the honesty, even when it feels uncomfortable." Armed with a new mutual understanding, we began to talk more openly about our expectations. Sure, there were discussions about plans, but also about our emotional landscapes, our worries, and dreams. We started meeting not just during events in the community but for the little things: coffee on lazy Sundays, movie nights where we'd laugh over outdated films, moments that glimmered brighter than any party we had ever hosted. The rebuilding wasn't smooth, I'd be lying if I said it was easy. Sometimes we'd slip back into old habits, forgetting to check in with each other. But with each misstep, each awkward text or accidental silence, we would remind ourselves that growth isn't a straight line. It's more of a sprawling web of mistakes and little triumphs, golden threads weaving us tighter. Months passed, and while our friendship wasn't wholly restored, it felt reborn, like a flower stubbornly blooming through asphalt, resilient and beautiful. I realized that it was okay not to have all the answers, to not put an official label on our bond just yet. What mattered was the journey we navigated together, filled with more understanding. And even in silence, we were learning to be okay. One day, at a small gathering at another friend's house, I caught Jess's eye across the crowded room. She raised her glass, a smile blooming on her face. That simple gesture felt monumental, like we had said so much without uttering a single word. Looking back now, I think about the precarious balance of friendships and how vulnerability, when shared, can create something beautiful from chaos. Sometimes, all it takes to mend a frayed connection is acknowledging our imperfections and extending the grace to learn together. And as I stand on this winding path, uncertain of where it leads, I feel a new sense of resilience alongside Jess, a promise that we would continue to navigate the hard conversations, weaving our laughter and heartaches into the intricate tapestry of our friendship one day at a time. I still remember the night I got the call that changed everything. I was sprawled out on my couch, munching on cold pizza and trying to binge watch a series I had been neglecting. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with my brother Alex's name lighting up the screen, and I paused, shoving a slice aside to answer. He sounded frantic. His dog, Max, had swallowed a toy and was in serious trouble. The vet bills were going to be astronomical, and Alex, who always seemed to live paycheck to paycheck, was in panic mode. I could hear Max whimpering faintly in the background, but what struck me most was the desperation in Alex's voice. He said he'd do anything to save him. Then came the awkward but necessary reminder of the $7,000 I had received as a reimbursement for a recent trip, money that I had earmarked for a much-needed down payment on a car. That dream felt so close, and yet here was my brother, my only family, pleading for help. "I don't know what to do, I can't afford this, please, I'll pay you back," he begged, and I could practically hear Max's tiny heart racing in my imagination. I felt torn apart. I pictured myself in Alex's shoes, drowning in worry, and how helpless I'd feel without the means to help Max. But that money wasn't just meant for my car, it represented stability and independence. With my heart heavy, I said, "Okay, I'll help, but you have to promise to pay me back." The relief in his voice was palpable, but it left me with a knot in my stomach because I knew I was setting aside my own needs, yet another instance of playing the role of the responsible sibling. A month later, I received a text that Alex's vet bills had exceeded my original offer. The more I sat with this, the more my anxiety grew. I had scrimped and saved to take that trip and had budgeted every cent meticulously, only to consider forking it over to Alex without any clear path back to my own goals. When I pressed him for repayment guarantees, he just got defensive. "You don't understand, Claire. This is about saving a life." I was a mix of frustration and guilt, feeling like he was weaponizing Max's health against me. It didn't help that Max had surgery, he was doing better, but I was still financially adrift, and my own bills were piling up. I started to withdraw, hesitating to reach out to my brother, fearing he might expect more from me. Our conversations became strained, every message loaded with unspoken tension. I felt like a villain for wanting my financial security but also a fool for not stepping up more. AITA for not just giving this up? I want to support him, but how can I? I contemplated, sitting on the edge of a precursory decision, my emotions tangled up like a knot I couldn't quite untie. Every day felt like a weigh-in, balancing my love for my brother against my needs. I finally reached out, heart pounding, and we talked it out. He reiterated how grateful he was but made me realize he needed to own his responsibilities, too. In that moment of raw honesty, we both recognized that familial bonds shouldn't be measured in money. We found a way forward, adjusting his payments while developing new understandings of our roles. It's been a month since our conversation, and though Alex still hasn't fully paid me back, I can feel the shift in our dynamic. We're more communicative now, working together on building that sibling bond while slowly repairing our financial strains. I'm still working toward my car and letting go of that guilt that weighed so heavy on my shoulders. As for Max, he seems to be thriving, wagging his tail more than ever, and honestly, the sight of him bouncing around has been worth every unspent dollar. Life goes on, and so do we. I never thought that a dog could teach humans so much about resilience and love, but here we are. Sitting in my living room on a rainy Saturday morning, I watch Max sprawled out on the couch, belly up, legs splayed like he owns the place. His existence has brought this unexpected joy into our lives, a bright spot amid the turbulent waters we've been navigating. As I sip my coffee, I think back to where it all started, the phone call from Alex that threw our family finances into disarray. At first, it felt like a betrayal when he asked me for the money I had reimbursed for our trip. $7,000 was no small amount, especially when it had been earmarked for my car payments. But the moment he voiced his concern about Max's health, suddenly I wasn't just considering my expenses, I was wrestling with the moral weight of my decision. Was I being selfish for holding on to what was technically mine, even if it could help save a life? That hum of internal conflict lingered for days. I remember pacing my apartment late at night, phone in hand, my mind racing with thoughts of Alex's mounting vet bills and the reality of Max's situation, a mix of concern for my brother and the loyalty I felt toward my own responsibilities. Our late-night conversations grew more profound, more vulnerable. I started understanding that Alex wasn't just my brother but also a guy who felt trapped, scared, and desperately in love with his dog. It shifted something in our relationship. My decision not to transfer that money immediately felt like an anchor in this new, tumultuous sea we were sailing. Over time, as I slowly began to find my footing again through little jobs and gig opportunities, I'd worked out a plan to address my own financial concerns without abandoning him completely. I agreed to help him with a fraction of the costs because I knew that Max's well-being weighed heavier on his heart than any financial burden I was carrying. Then there was that one Saturday morning after Alex had worked late into the night just to bring in some extra cash. I could see the exhaustion drawn on his face. I made us both a hearty breakfast, scrambled eggs with toast and avocado, and set it on the kitchen table. The smell of the coffee brewing and the sizzle of the eggs seemed to wake him from a stupor, and as he sat down, I could feel the tension easing between us a little more. "You didn't have to do this," he said, rubbing his eyes. "I'm fine managing on my own, you know." "Yeah, but I think we both need this," I replied, feeling the warmth of our moment. That morning felt different. As we shared stories about our childhood, about fights over whether we were going to eat cereal or a sandwich for dinner, that affectionate banter we held so dear, I noticed our walls were coming down. I could see how much he cared about Max, and I was easing into my own role of support rather than a reluctant benefactor. By now, it was clear that our relationship was morphing. Thanks to late-night chats, hearty breakfasts, and those small decisions to be there for each other, I could finally release the tension built up from those days of resentment and guilt. As the weeks rolled on, I found that seeing Max bounce around with energy made the guilt of not having my car more bearable. Each evening, I would join Alex on walks with Max, enjoying the fresh air. We'd talk about silly things, music, movies, and his latest attempts at becoming a TikTok sensation. I never imagined the world of dog stardom could be so competitive, but seeing him get more animated discussing it lifted my spirits. And sure, things aren't perfect yet. There are still disagreements about finances and the lingering edge of unfulfilled expectations regarding repayment, but we're working through it together. It's less of a transaction and more about reconnecting. We're nurturing our connection instead of guarding our pockets. I still want my car, and I still don't have all my ducks in a row financially, but I've come to realize that there's something more valuable in these moments with Alex and Max. Life is messy, and sometimes we end up in these tangled webs, but as I stare at Max now, I recognize that we're all figuring it out in our own time, one paw, $1, and one fragile bond at a time. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow across the living room where I sat with Alex, both of us fully enveloped in a narrative that was still very much in progress. Max, his soft golden fur catching the light just right, lay sprawled on the floor, blissfully unaware of the intricacies of human transactions and expectations. The vigor with which he played with his squeaky toy felt like an innocently perfect metaphor for the simplicity we all sometimes overlook. It was moments like this that made me realize how worth it was to prioritize relationships over finances, no matter how tempting it was to cling to the cold, hard numbers that dictated our realities. I glanced at Alex, who was focused on his phone, probably debating whether to text the veterinary clinic about Max's follow-up appointment. There was a new tenderness to our interactions. The shadows of previous conversations no longer seemed to linger like an unwelcome cloud above us. Instead, they were softer now, like hints of rain, bringing life to dry earth. "Hey," I said, breaking through his concentration. "You know I'm proud of you, right? For making decisions that are best for Max." He looked up, surprise flickering across his face momentarily before his features settled into an almost shy smile. "Yeah? Thanks," he replied, rubbing the back of his neck, a young habit he hadn't outgrown. "Sometimes it feels like I'm just flailing around," I chuckled, shaking my head. "We all are. And flailing is totally okay. Just means we're trying." The energy in the room shifted again, a sort of understanding settling in the space around us. It was a reminder of our childhood days, silly but honest adventures where flailing often resulted in laughter. With each conversation, we shared not only the events of our days but also our vulnerabilities, our doubts. I found solace in sharing my worries about my finances. Sometimes I would even admit my lingering desires for that car, while Alex voiced his fears about the vet bills piling up and how they would affect his already meager budget. Yet, there we were, two adults learning that money isn't the core of our bond but merely a side note. As if on cue, Max leapt up, capturing our attention as he chased his toy across the room, skidding slightly as he turned a corner too quickly. "Super dog," I shouted playfully and tossed his ball toward the kitchen. His excitement was infectious, and for a few moments, we watched him, both of us chuckling at the silliness of it all. It wasn't lost on me how Max had somehow tethered us back together in a way that money never could. He was family, and sustaining him meant nourishing our relationship too. There was still a long road ahead. I could feel the weight of unfulfilled promises and unpaid bills lingering, but each day of shared responsibilities felt like a little victory. I had let go of the need to keep precise accounts between us. Our relationship was worth more than dollar signs. Instead, I focused on being there when Alex called for moral support and being flexible when it came to managing my own financial expectations. Weeks went by and the dynamic continued to shift from necessity to genuine connection. Sometimes, while Alex was working late or volunteering with Max at the local shelter, I'd steal moments for myself, negotiating my own budgets, trying to find a way to carve out a new sense of financial independence. Instead of pressuring myself to rebalance the scales, I began to find joy in little luxuries, a fancy coffee after a long day or a new book to immerse myself in. It wasn't about recklessness but rather a practice in nurturing my own happiness alongside my obligations to my brother and his dog. One evening, sprawled comfortably on the couch, Alex and I watched an old movie together, the kind that stretched between dramas and comedies, filled with awkward pauses and inopportune moments. Max was nestled between us, snoring softly as we munched on popcorn. I felt a serene sense of contentment washing over me. It struck me that the burdens I thought were too heavy to carry were lightened even just by sharing the journey with someone else. I didn't know if I would ever get that car, and honestly, it started to feel relatively trivial against the backdrop of healing that was happening. Each time I saw Max bounded around, or caught a glimpse of Alex's genuine laughter, I recognized that the recalibration of our lives didn't need to revolve around a reimbursement of $7,000 after all. As the credits rolled and the room was filled with warmth from the setting sun, I smiled, grateful for both the challenges and the small victories that continually reshaped my understanding of family and commitment. Whatever came next, be it car ownership or new financial goals, would ultimately be secondary to the connections made, patched up, and reinforced through this journey of shared learning, love, and, of course, one wagging tail at a time. I still can't believe what happened at my house last week. I live in a small, quiet neighborhood. My home is my sanctuary. It's where I unwind after long days at the office, where I bake my famous chocolate chip cookies, and where the peace of mind comes from knowing I'm in control of my space. When I bought this place, it was just me, and I loved it for that reason. But lately, things have been shifting. It all started on a breezy Saturday afternoon. I was in my kitchen, humming under my breath while the sweet smell of vanilla and melting chocolate wafted through the air. There was a knock at my door, nothing unusual, perhaps a neighbor, or maybe even a delivery. When I opened it, there stood a woman, early 30s, hair pulled back in an impatient ponytail, and beside her was a little girl, maybe 6, with muddy shoes and a candy-stained shirt. "Hi. Sorry to bother you, I live just a block down and I'm in a bit of a bind," the mom said, her eyes darting nervously. Right away, something felt off. I had a million things to do, and my instinct was to politely decline, but instead, I just stood there listening. She explained that her car had broken down and she needed to wait for a friend to pick her up. Could they just stay for a little while? Now, I know what you're thinking. What's the harm in offering a couple of strangers a place to hang out momentarily? But as she talked, the unease grew in my stomach. I was imagining the crumbs and chaos her child might bring into my pristine living room, which I had just tidied up. Still, I let them in. As soon as they crossed the threshold, the girl dashed to my potted plants and began poking around, while her mother plopped on my pristine couch, checking her phone like it was a ticking clock. The tension started to rise in me, but I balanced on the edge of playing gracious host and keeping my sanity intact. "Please don't disturb that," I warned gently, watching the little girl tug at the leaves, only to be met with a vacant stare from the mom who barely looked up. It felt like an age passed, and I tried engaging them in small talk, yet the responses were vague at best. Time crawled, and I was just about ready to ask them to leave when chaos erupted. The girl, now bored, had turned her attention to my art supplies, scattering everything all over the table with gleeful shouts. Her mother was still glued to her phone. I could feel that simmering frustration escalate to a boil. Finally, with all the control I could muster, I shouted, "Get out! Both of you! You cannot just come into someone's house and act like you own the place." My voice echoed through the hallway as if summoning the spirits of past homeowners who would disapprove of such a scene. Time halted. The mother's eyes widened in disbelief, the little girl froze mid-tugging at the nearest brush. Realizing what I had done, I felt the weight of my own rage suffocating me. It was an outburst I hadn't intended. The mom, flushed with embarrassment or anger, gathered her daughter's things, fumbling through my living room, and rushed out without a word. The echo of the door slamming shut left me shaken, and my heart raced with an unsettling mix of guilt and relief. Maybe I had overreacted. I thought about the boundaries, the slow realization of how easily someone can slip into your life and home without permission. In the days following, I was consumed with anxiety. I knew my reaction wasn't a shining example of graciousness. I was the bad guy in this scenario. Friends were mixed in their opinions when I shared the story. Some told me I should have been kinder, while others defended my right to protect my space. I didn't know which side I fell on. All I knew was it didn't feel right to let them in the first place. So, I reached out to the mother through a social media platform focused on local community connections, apologizing for my outburst and explaining how overwhelmed I had felt. To my surprise, she replied days later, saying she understood the situation. She was just as overwhelmed with her own stress. We ended up messaging back and forth a few times, even laughing about how life's chaos often spills over, especially for parents trying to manage it all. As uncomfortable as that day was, I think it brought us closer in a strange, honest way, leading me to reflect on the shared struggles we all face. Who knows, maybe next time I'll be better prepared to handle unexpected visitors, or perhaps, I'll finally be able to embrace a little bit of that chaos I once feared. I still think about that day, the strange blend of embarrassment and relief that lingered long after the dust settled. In the week that followed, my conversations with Kelsey shifted into something unexpected, a cautious friendship born from an awkward moment in my living room. We hadn't met up in person since, and honestly, even the thought of it terrified me. I had reluctantly opened my door, both to a literal visitor and to a window into a world outside my own rigid routines. I remember sitting by my kitchen window, which overlooked the busy street that once felt so far removed from my life, and watching the families hustle by. Their lives seemed so full of everything I had avoided, the noise, the laughter, the mess. I scrolled through my phone one dreary afternoon, pausing at a photo Kelsey had sent. It was of her at a park with her son, laughing over a picnic spread that they had captured mid-bite in vivid colors. The joy radiating from that shot made me ache for a connection I'd shunned for far too long. Embarking on this new, unusual friendship was shaky at first. I found myself second-guessing every text, wondering if I was bothering her. But she seemed eager to chat. Her humor kept creeping in, reminding me that maybe I wasn't as hopelessly out of sync with the rest of the world as I thought. "Just a couple of imperfect adults," she texted once, during one of our late-night exchanges. I chuckled, finally letting my guard down just a little. Our messages felt like little life buoys amid the turbulent waters we were both navigating. Then, 2 weeks post-chaos, Kelsey sent a message that threw me. She was planning a small barbecue for the neighborhood and suggested I come. My heart raced at the thought of being surrounded by unfamiliar faces. What if I'm the only one without kids there? I thought, battling my introverted nature. But then I remembered our last exchange, how she'd alluded to a family that might be just as overwhelmed as I was. There was an odd kind of comfort in that realization, a shared humanity in feeling lost amid our roles. Gritting my teeth, I reluctantly agreed. The day of the barbecue felt like preparing for an exam I hadn't studied for. I walked into her backyard, heart pounding, trying to steady my breath amidst the laughter and clinking of glasses. To my surprise, the atmosphere buzzed with warmth, the scent of grilled burgers wafting through the air. Kids played tag, their squeals of laughter mixing with the sounds of easy conversations. Kelsey spotted me first, and her face lit up like a beacon. "You made it," she called out, and in that moment, any anxiety I had ebbed away. Slowly, I started mingling, conversations flowing more naturally than I anticipated. I learned about the other parents and their various struggles, in parenting, in life, common experiences resonating through their stories. Their laughter reminded me how liberating it was to just be, without the confines of expectations running my day-to-day. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting everything in soft hues of orange and pink, I found myself chatting with a mother named Sarah, who was going through a separation. I listened to her fears echo some of my own, our conversation like a threading of kindred spirits who had weathered storms unseen to each other. I wasn't expecting this, being pulled into a collective narrative of struggle and perseverance, but it filled a void I didn't know I'd been trying to fill. When I spotted Kelsey across the yard, tending to the grill, I smiled, a silent thank you escaping my lips. Maybe at that moment, surrounded by strangers who shared the same evening light, capable of their own chaos, I realized I wasn't the only one feeling overwhelmed and isolated. I could feel the threads of connection weaving around us all, stitching us together in this weird, chaotic fabric of community. That night as I drifted to sleep, I felt lighter, unburdened from the weight I had been carrying. I thought about our original conflict and marveled at how one moment, one chaotic, unexpected moment, could unravel a tight-knit cocoon I had spun around myself and reveal the world outside. Who knows where this newfound openness would lead me? All I knew was life was messy, but perhaps it's the mess that reminded us we're all human, endlessly trying to figure it out. And maybe embracing a little chaos wasn't such a bad thing after all. The next morning, I woke up feeling oddly invigorated by my new perspective. As I sipped my coffee, the sun poured in through the kitchen windows, illuminating the chaos of my kitchen table, half-finished projects, to-do lists that seemed to multiply overnight, and crumbs from snacks I never got around to cleaning up. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, I let out a soft laugh. I noticed the beauty in the clutter, the laughter of my kids playing in the other room, and for a moment, I even found it charming. I finished my coffee and decided to embrace the unpredictability of my day. I pulled out my phone and shot a message to Sarah, the mom of the kid I'd yelled at. "Hey, I'm going to the park later with the kids. Would you like to join us?" There was a slight flutter of nerves in my stomach as I hit send, but I hoped she might appreciate the invitation. To my surprise, she responded almost immediately, her excitement palpable through the screen. "I'd love to. We could all use some fresh air." That afternoon, as I gathered the kids and packed a picnic, which, let's be honest, mainly consisted of granola bars and whatever leftovers I could scrounge, I felt that lightness from the other night creeping back in. The park was only a few blocks away, so we walked there, my kids running ahead, their laughter echoing through the neighborhood. When we reached the park, I spotted Sarah and her son, Jamie, already there, smiling and waving. She looked a touch frazzled, her hair slightly tousled, but wasn't that part of the charm? We were all in the same boat, struggling to navigate this beautiful mess called life. As the kids played, Sarah and I found ourselves on a nearby bench, sipping bottled water, and exchanging stories. We shared little victories, like managing to get both our kids to school on time and the absurdity of trying to cook dinner while juggling a million other tasks. I could feel the remnants of that chaotic day beginning to fade, replaced by a shared understanding and camaraderie. She talked about feeling alone in her journey, and it hit me hard. How often had I cloistered myself in my own worries instead of reaching out? We laughed about our moments of parenting failure, like the time she accidentally sent her daughter to school in mismatched shoes. "I thought it was a fashion statement," she joked, her eyes twinkling. Turns out it was just a mess. The ease of our conversation felt like a soothing balm. For the first time in a while, I felt like I was part of something larger, a community of fellow parents who were all just trying to figure it out while managing their own chaos. As the sun began to set and the sky turned into a canvas of oranges and pinks, I realized this was exactly the kind of connection I had been missing. It didn't matter that we'd started off on rocky ground, here we were, laughing and sharing amid our imperfections. I had learned that moments of conflict could lead to something beautiful, like the intertwining of two chaotic lives into one shared experience. We packed our things as the sky darkened, our kids, blissfully oblivious, still racing around. I looked over at Sarah, now my ally instead of an adversary, and we promised to meet again. Walking back home, I felt the chaotic fabric of community wrap itself around me a little tighter. Maybe, just maybe, this mess wasn't something to fear but something to embrace, a chaotic tapestry of hope, shared laughter, and the kind of connection that truly makes life rich. I went to bed that night feeling a sense of belonging I hadn't felt in a long time, grateful for the unpredictable journey that had brought us together. It seemed that embracing chaos had opened a door I didn't even know needed opening. It was a standard Friday night at our house, and the air was thick with the smell of freshly baked brownies and popcorn that I had just finished tossing in the air fryer. As the matriarch of my family and an ever-dedicated team mom for my daughter's softball squad, I thought I was hitting all the right notes. We had a sleepover planned for the girls after practice, a popular tradition that usually saw kids raiding our pantry for snacks until someone inevitably flops into a sugar coma. I had decided to swing for the fences this time, metaphorically speaking, with a spread that I thought would resonate: chips, soda, candy, you name it, everything I deemed fun and sleepover worthy. But as the girls poured in, all giggles and energy, my heart sank a little when I caught sight of one of the other moms standing by the snack table with a look of horror etched across her face. "Oh wow, I didn't think we were having a junk food party," she quipped with a tight smile, and it felt like the air had stopped circulating for a moment. You see, this particular mom, Lisa, prided herself on health. She lectured everyone during meetings about nutrition and how vital it was for our children, especially athletes, to have the right fuel. My mind started racing. Was I actually doing something wrong? The girls, oblivious to the tension brewing, dug into the snacks with glee, but I felt undeniably uneasy. I recalled when I was a kid, and sleepovers were a chaotic mix of soda and treats, with laughter drowned out only by the sound of a completely exhausted mom trying to keep the volume down. So why did it feel different now, like I was some villain for wanting my daughter to just enjoy the simplicity of junk food at a sleepover? As Lisa continued to sip on her herbal tea and lecture the other moms who didn't seem too worried, my anxiety turned into a defensive flare-up, and I could feel myself brimming with irritation. I finally blurted out something like, "It's just one night, and they deserve to have fun." But instantly regretted it when Lisa gave me that classic "I'm disappointed" look. The girls continued munching away, but I, unfortunately, was caught in a spiral of doubt, wondering if maybe I had put the ultimate parental foot wrong by not adhering to a strict playbook of health guidelines that I never signed up for. The tension in the air grew, and as the night wore on, I kept picturing the conversations that were taking place behind my back. Would they question if I was a good mom for allowing this? Did they think I didn't care about their health? As the girls shouted for comedies in the living room, my heart softened thinking about the laughter I had intended to cultivate with my choices. Moments passed, and they were bouncing off walls, connecting in joy. It ignited a flicker of comfort in my chest, until out of the blue, one of the girls, Emma, threw up after a particularly spirited burst of sugary energy. Chaos erupted. Lisa whipped around dramatically as if I were solely responsible for this culinary catastrophe, which only fueled the anxiety swirling within me. As I cleaned up the mess with 1,000 apologies spilling from my lips, I caught a glimpse of the other mother's stifling laughter, and I realized that my fears of being judged might have been blown way out of proportion. I discovered that Lisa's health obsession didn't resonate with a lot of the other moms who craved a little levity amidst the grind of competitive youth sports. By the end of the night, even Lisa was helping me, albeit reluctantly, while still casting judgmental glances, and I found solace in my daughters hugging me tightly. "That was fun, Mom," she said, and in that moment, I realized something vital. Parenting doesn't come with a defined manual, and sometimes you just need to let kids be kids, even if it means extra junk on a special night. I went to bed that night reflecting on how our choices shape our children's memories, and I fell asleep wondering if Lisa's comments would still sting in the morning. In the weeks that followed, I did have conversations with other parents that highlighted varying opinions about nutrition and fun, and while a few still sided with Lisa, many came to my defense, sharing that they, too, remembered the sheer joy of junk food and chaos from their own childhoods. I found a cool balance moving forward, incorporating a mix of healthier snacks into the mix while preserving those nostalgic treats, and reminded myself that while we all want the best for our kids, fun and freedom have their own essential place in growing up. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, there's more than one way to be a good mom, one that includes a little more love and a little less judgment. Reflecting on that night, I felt an array of emotions swirling inside me, a blend of relief and residual tension that lingered long after the sleepover chaos had faded. The laughter and the smell of popcorn had long been replaced by the soft hush of the night, but the lingering whispers of doubt still echoed in my mind. Sure, I'd found a way to balance the snacks, but a part of me wondered if I had truly won any battle. Why was I so shaken by Lisa's opinion? I prided myself on being a laid-back mom, one who encouraged fun and creativity, yet here I was, caught up in a whirlwind of guilt over a plate piled high with nachos and gummy bears. Later that week, as I drove the girls to practice, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. My daughter Amelia, perched in the back seat with her friends, was laughing uncontrollably over some inside joke, her face lit up like a Christmas tree. That simple joy made my heart swell. In that moment, I realized I was the architect of those giggly memories. I had chosen to let them have that vibrant night, embracing the wild spirit of childhood. Yet, I couldn't help but glance up at the school in front of me, wondering if tomorrow it would be a soft reminder of Lisa's judgment or a celebration of my commitment to being a good mother. One evening, while sorting through Amelia's backpack, I stumbled upon a handwritten note. It was a small, folded piece of paper, and my curiosity pricked at me. I opened it, and there in her familiar scrawl was a thank you note that made my heart ache with sweetness. "Thank you for the best sleepover ever, Mom. You let me have fun and brought smiles to my friends' faces." In that moment, everything came rushing back, the messy fun, the laughter, the absurdity of our midnight snack creations. My heart tightened, a wave of gratitude washed over me, reminding me how becoming a mother had transformed my perspective. As the weeks rolled on, something remarkable happened. I began embracing the idea that nurturing wasn't always about strictness, that it could coexist with silliness, an epiphany that settled comfortably in my mind. The days became a warm embrace of mixed snacks, Saturday movie marathons, and occasional baking soirees where the only rule was if it doesn't look good, it still tastes amazing. It's funny how a sleepover, and all the drama that came with it, could circle back into something nourishing, filling the gaps with laughter rather than tracking rules. With time, I learned to tune out Lisa's opinions and forge my own version of motherhood, one where every smile my daughter wore was worth its weight in sugar. I'd texted Lisa a few times since then, bridging our conversation with casual updates about practice and games, and while she remained polite, the tension between us lingered like an awkward dance. Sometimes, though, I still questioned if I was being too lenient or allowing too much chaos, yet I realized a little chaotic fun, even in the form of junk food, was a gift I was proud to give. On a Sunday afternoon, I brought out the rainbow sprinkles and ice cream, throwing an impromptu ice cream social for Amelia and her friends. They squealed with delight as the ice cream dripped and the sprinkles cascaded over piled high cones. Each burst of laughter felt like a gentle reminder: every day doesn't need to fit into a mold, every meal doesn't need to be perfect. Instead, I learned to celebrate this wild, messy, beautiful phase called childhood, where chaos had its rightful place alongside lessons of moderation. So, was I really the asshole for that sleepover? Maybe a little for being too concerned about the opinions of others, but not for letting my daughter revel in a night of joy. In the grand picture of life, it turned out that love, laughter, and a little sprinkle of chaos were all essential ingredients in crafting lasting memories. As I watched Amelia laugh and play with her friends, effortlessly lost in their bubble of happiness, I knew I was okay with all the contradictions and complexities of parenthood. At the end of the day, I was simply doing my best, and that felt perfect enough. As I settled into the comfortable chaos of our living room, a wave of relief washed over me. The night had transformed from a battlefield of expectations into a tapestry woven with laughter, illuminated by the sporadic bursts of giggles that echoed against the walls, clashing against my doubts like fireworks in the night sky. I sat back on the couch, an oversized bowl of popcorn nestled on my lap, my heart swelling as I observed Amelia and her friends sprawled out across the floor, their individual quirks forming a beautiful mosaic of childhood. I baked those brownies with chunks of chocolate that probably had more sugar than cocoa. They'd turned out to be a hit, their sweet scent melding with the salty popcorn and cheesy nachos that we all started burying ourselves in. Yet, there was still that niggling thought, that seed of insecurity stemming from my conversation with Lisa. Did I really go too far in choosing the menu for the sleepover? Were my intentions, initially pure and joyful, overshadowed by my worry of not fitting the mold of what a responsible mom should be? I wanted to be an influential figure in their lives, an anchor they could return to, but here I was, casting aside the boundary of moderation in this one small area. As much as I prayed my daughter wouldn't be consumed by the judgments of others, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd somehow let her down by embracing the fun side of food instead of becoming the health-conscious mom. But then I looked again. The sight before me, a pile of pillows and blankets, laughter spilling into every corner, was a reminder of the freedom I'd wanted for her. Each girl had a slice of pizza in one hand and a brownie in the other, cheeks smeared with splotches of melted chocolate. Their bond over those treats felt sacred, a moment stolen from the everyday obligations of being children. I recalled my own sleepovers filled with late-night snacks and whispered secrets, how those nights had cajoled the stars out of me, age-old friendships cemented over laughter and late-night debates about which boy band was the best. "Can we have a dance party next?" Amelia suggested, lighting up with that uncontainable energy only youth can possess. The girls erupted into an agreement, and they jumped to their feet like a pack of puppies. I laughed. A dance party wasn't exactly part of the itinerary. But then, what's an itinerary when you're young and alive? As the music started blaring from the speaker, I got up to join them, hesitant at first, but willing to let the rhythm sweep me into their world. I swung my arms, letting go of any remaining self-consciousness while they twirled around me, losing themselves to the beat. For a brief moment, I was that age again, slipping into the simplicity of life without the weight of judgment. The laughter morphed into a chorus of delight, and in that dance, I felt the gentle reminder that while structure is essential, spontaneity breathes life into our existence. Just then, my phone buzzed, and it was a text from Lisa. "Hey, I've been thinking about what you said and I wanted to apologize for being judgmental. You're doing great, and maybe I have some things to work on too." A warmth spread through me. Maybe my heart wasn't racing as much from my worries tonight. Maybe, just maybe, in this complex world, we were all navigating something wholly imperfect together. As I hit reply, I felt resolute. "Thank you, Lisa. We all have our style. Let's collaborate on the next sleepover." The night wore on, a gentle spiral into laughter and camaraderie. As the girls eventually flopped down onto sleeping bags, sleepy-eyed and full of sugar, I knew that in that moment, I'd created a safe space for them to breathe, to thrive. I slipped into my own refuge of reflection, accepting that I was not just a mom who fed her kids junk food but a creator of memories, a guardian of joy. Behind the cozy chaos, love had poured in, filling every corner. And in that messy, beautiful night, I learned once more that sometimes being the best parent means letting go of the whole right and wrong approach, simply allowing love, laughter, and a sprinkle of fun to lead the way.